Hello everyone. So getting a bit of interest on the Raspberry Pi slow motion night vision that I'm doing, and so I thought it'd be quite nice to share that the code behind it is not overly complicated. And so what we're going to do is just going to go and show you on how to do it. Now I'm going to make some assumptions first. I'm assuming that if you've got a Raspberry Pi, you've got over the basics. So the basics would be getting the image for the Raspberry Pi, which is basically a Linux distribution. So for those who don't know what that would mean is if you just think of Windows, it's an operating system and it'll just allow you to do stuff. So that's again going, you've got the Linux distribution and you know how to SSH into it, and that in itself is just basically a secure connection between two devices, and that's what I'm just going to do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect to the Raspberry Pi. So this would be how you would do it. It asks me for the password. Ah, typical. Me and my fat chipolatas. You're kidding. Hey, you got in there eventually. So what we want to do is essentially, as I've got back there, is I need a bit of code that will start essentially anytime, well, essentially when the power comes up. I just want it to run this code. That's what I want it to do. You can probably slim what I'm doing down a lot, but it's more of an advanced Linux. So what we'll do is we'll go into this. So what I'll do is let's do sudo nano Okay, so this part here is where I'm going to allow the startup. So what I do is I put in this particular file. So all you do is you come down to this point here, just above the exit 0, and put sudo /home/pi/cameraboot.sh. Now essentially it's this part here. Let's highlight it. There we go. So that part there is a file name. That file name is actually a computer program that will just run. So basically what I'm doing is saying, when you fire up, this is the program that you want to run. This part here is just telling you that it's where it's located. So think of like a file structure that you've got. So my documents on your Windows platform is a good example. And the sudo is basically, I want to use it as a super user and just run it. So that's just one line of code that you just need to put in there. Then what you want to do is press Control and X. Now when you do that the first time around, it will ask you to confirm that you want it to save, it's been modified, and so on. And essentially just to check that you want to overwrite the file. So that's that part done. The next part is the file itself. So I want to do sudo nano camera boot.sh, and this is the code that runs. So this is essentially a small bash script. Again, I won't go too much into the almost the what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, the languages that are used to describe this. But basically, this is again a small type of program to run. So this is all the text that you need to put in. I'm going to put this on my blog that I've got for this, and a link in the description. So if you just want to copy and paste, but I'm going to just explain what we're going to do. So what this is, it's a loop. What a loop does is it'll do a set of commands. Once it's finished the command, it'll go and do it again. Continuously. Hence why it's called a loop. It just goes around in a loop. Now you can do loops that will do a certain number of events. So it'll do it 10 times and then stop. or you can do this one is an infinite loop, it'll run forever. The only thing that'll stop this from running is the actual battery on the Raspberry Pi or the memory filling up and just killing itself, but we'll not allow it to do that. So that's where the loop is. So you do while, true, do, and this is where again I use the super user information. So super user Raspberry Vid -W, which is width, so 640, height 480, dash the important one FPS, frames per second 90. Now with the Raspberry Pi and the camera itself, the maximum they can get is 90 frames per second. There is someone who claims that you can get it to run a lot higher, but that's a lot more advanced code, which is a bit out of my depth at the moment, but I need to review it and give it a bash. If it works, great, but I'm part thinking it's just a bit of a almost theory to show that you can make a figure go higher, and it's not actually true increase in frames per second, but I want to prove it first. Anyway, so next is the time. So I want to run it for 180,000 milliseconds. That equates to essentially 3 minutes. If you do a 3-minute video like I've just got there, it's quite nice because once it's slowed down, it's actually 10 minutes worth of footage when you play it back. If you start going longer, it actually makes editing an absolute pain in the backside. But you know, 3 minutes is quite nice, and because it's in a loop, you've only got like 3-minute tranches. What happens is comes to the end of the code, the screen blinks for a second, comes up with some code, and comes back up and record again. So you don't actually lose too much. Probably would be frustrating if you was just about to take a shot, but you know, until I figure something else out, we'll have to bear with it. The next part is to output, and what we're doing is outputting to home /pi/tester.h264. This H264 is the main important part because that's the actual, think of it as the file type, is the one for a better word. So a bit like an MP4 or an AVI file, we're going to save it as a H264. It's nice and easy, and also it uploads to YouTube, no problems at all. It doesn't give you any problems. The name tester, you can call that anything you want. You can call it Billy Bob, for example, if you want to. Now the next part is where we're making a change now, because if you was to have this loop go round and round, all you would end up doing is you would create a tester, make the file, and then instantly record over it, and then record over it, and record over it, and record over it, and you wouldn't get anything out of it unless you manage to stop the file literally dead on just before the code started, and you're not going to be able to do that. So what I've done here is I've then modified the code slightly to say, after I've had my file created, what I wanted to do is I do another function which is sudo mv, and the mv function can be used for either moving a file or actually renaming it. So the way I've done this is I've basically said with the home /pi/tester.h264, with that I've then made it take that file and then change it to home /pi/test, and then what I've used is the actual date and timestamp to a degree to give me a new file. Now the reason why that's quite nice is by doing so you avoid getting a duplicate file name created. There's another mechanism that you can do, and I was having problems with it, but this one's actually quite nice because if you think about it, there's never ever going to be the same point in time ever. Not even now, even after I just said it, that second is gone, that's lost time. Same principle applies. So basically what I've done is I've used the date, so this is plus the day, then the month, the year, the second, and then the hour, and I've done it that way, and in a sense it kind of works for me. I could actually flip it the other way around where I've got hours, minutes, seconds, but that works for me. You play around with that if you wish, there's no problem at all. And then .h264. So at the end of that line, what happens, that all then runs through, and we'll just constantly keep on making a file. So if I X out of this, if I do a command like this, you can see all these files here, they've been created. So I can, if I just do, let's do sudo move test underscore, oops, to start. So you can see I've just got a test file, so that's the one that's recording at the moment. I'll do this in a second after we've waffled on, but then what we'll find is the file name will be created. So next, what I want to do is just make this, it's in green at the moment, and the reason being is because I've made it bootable. So what I want to do is do Sage mod plus X camera, and that's it. And essentially, that is done. I can now do another command which basically will reboot the Raspberry Pi. It'll just have this connection, and that's it. That's all the code that you need. It's nice and easy, very, very crude, but it does the job, and it will allow you now to do your own night vision slow motion footage. So thanks for watching, as always. By all means, like, share, subscribe. If you've got any questions about this, let me know. I wouldn't claim that I'm a Linux expert, but I can get my way around it, and for the stuff that we're doing, it's not actually overly complicated. As the project moves on, I might move into more complicated areas, but I'll be going through it with you as best as I can. Anyway, there you go. Thanks a lot.